Hey y'all, it's Sarah. I have kind of another love-based type project for you guys today. This one is not a new concept, and you're going to see what I mean by that, but I'm just showing you a way to do it in foam core. So I want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to tell you what all I'm going to be using for this. One of the first things that I'll be using is some kind of heart-shaped heart. I've got a couple of the Dollar Tree style ones here. Any of these could work. I'm actually going to be using the little red wood one. You only need one. This glittery red one in the center there, that one's a really good option. So keep those in mind. I'm going to be using some Dollar Tree Alpha stickers. I'm going to show you... I'm going to be using this set right here. I'm going to show you an option with adding this, and this is another one that they have, and they have a few other styles also. I'm also going to be using just a piece of wax paper to do those stickers, so if you have that handy, go ahead and grab it. I'm going to be using just some Dollar Tree hot glue. I'm going to be playing with this guy. If you don't recognize it, there is a Cool Tools video, and I'll link that below. This is just a nifty little under $15 purchase that I got to play with this material, but I'm going to show you an alternative to this. If you don't have one of these, not going to invest in one of these, you can still do this project. For those of you that aren't Cricut users or electric cutting machine users, this one is perfect for you guys. It doesn't require any cutting machine to get this look. And last but not least, we're going to be using just some Readi-board brand white foam core foam board. If you don't recognize what this is found in the office supply, school supply type areas of places like Dollar Tree, Wal-mart, Dollar General. This is right next to the posters, usually in a rack next to the poster board. It's normally $1 less a sheet. It comes in 20 by 30 sheets. We're using this kind of papery surface here. And this is also made from just the Dollar Tree Readi-board brand foam core. The wood tutorials for this is always kind of a separate thing because it takes more time to teach this look. So I'll link that video below also. There's several of them. You could always go in and really customize this look, match your framing out to whatever you want to do. All that being said, let's dive in. First thing I want to discuss is what we're cutting our foam core pieces to. So we're going to need 4 1-inch by 20-inch framing strips. We are going to be using 1 20 by 20 white backer cut. And we are going to also be using just some of these plain white strips in a 2-inch cut. This is for you guys if you are not gonna be using this V-groove tool. For you guys, you're gonna want to have some just plain white 2-inch wide strips, or however wide you want to do them. I'm doing my cuts or grooves at 2 inches. And let's go ahead and jump into this. So in order to use this V-groove tool, I want to tell you a couple of things. I'm not going to go into super lot of detail with this thing because there is a video exclusive to it, and a couple other of these Logan brand tools. But there are a couple things that I do want to tell you pretty much every single time, just to remind you. Foam core is manufactured in a certain direction, and if you rub your hands across it or you look at it from certain angles, you can kind of see this ripple effect, this wobble. When you're going to use this thing especially, and I tell you guys this when you're cutting also, cutting along the longest part of that ripple, kind of in line with that ripple, is going to give you a better, cleaner cut. That also is the case with this tool. You want to cut along the long part of that ripple, how it's manufactured. That way you're basically kind of cutting with the grain, essentially. In order to use this tool, I'm going to be pulling out my Logan Compact Mat Cutter. This is the model 301M. Mine is an older model, guys. The newer ones, I think, are in the 700 range. So they usually have deals on them at Hobby Lobby. A lot of members on the Peppermint Cactus group page have found them on Facebook Marketplace for pretty cheap. That's somewhere worth checking. I'll slide this out of the way because they do take up a lot of space. It's hard to tell how big this thing is, but it's a little over 3 feet, I believe. And I want to make sure that I'm on that grain. I'm on that kind of ripple effect. So in order to use this, you're going to want to come in and mark every 2 inches up. Now, this has an offset on it because the blade is centered right here rather than along the rail where some of the other blades for this thing run. So when you line it up, you want to line it up with that little notch right there. And I'm just going to show you how this works. I've already got one that is pre-done. But you're just going to line it up, and I'm going to assume that I'm at my 2-inch mark here. And I just marked 2 inches from the bottom to the top to the bottom, whichever way, or however many inches you want to go. So I'm just going to come in, line this guy up right on the edge. By the way, there are settings here on the bottom. The lower the setting, the smaller the notch that it cuts. I keep it somewhere between this 3 and this 5. It goes in really small increments in between there. You can feel it when you roll this dial. So I'm not going to go super deep with this. Going to get it lined up. Make sure everything's kind of padded in place here. I'm going to slide that all the way down. And I don't know how well you guys can see that in this lighting, but that ends up notching this out. And as you go all the way up, you get that shiplap look. Now, for those of you that don't have that tool, you're basically going to do the same cuts. I'm gonna move this heavy thing. They are pretty heavy. You're going to come in and just take your slats, just like we have with so many other projects. And I just grabbed a few that I happen to have in the 2-inch span, since I'm going to be using the groove. I'm using white under this, and I would suggest for this one using white under it rather than the typical black, because when you're going with this solid white, it's kind of a nice touch to add just a tiny little gap here so that you really kind of get that visual between your little slats. And in doing that, you're going to want the white to show through underneath so that it's kind of got some uniformity rather than normally we would put black behind it with the darker colors. So I would suggest putting just a little hair of a gap there. You can kind of see that that gives that very similar illusion, and you would just glue these to your backer piece where we're grooving our backer piece. You're just going to attach these to it, and you would move on to the very next step that we are going to move on to. And let me grab that. I have a backer piece already notched out. You guys can see it becomes just one sheet here. This one is notched out so that it kind of has that shiplap look. I didn't go at the normal 3-inch wide simply because of the size of this project. So your next thing, you want to kind of make sure that you're just eyeballing things before you glue them down. If you're not one for measuring, and I'm not one for doing a whole lot of measuring, just kind of visually look, make sure that your things are going to align up. I'm going to bring in my framing pieces. So they are at 20 inches, and we're going to miter that. And you want it at the 20 inches that this piece is width and height. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to show you how to get that mitered cut the easiest way I know how to show. So I've got my cutting surface, I've got a ruler, I've got just my handy dandy razor blade, got my little finger pads that help me grip this thing a little better, and they kind of protect my fingertip from getting sore from these things. So I'm going to take this 1-inch strip, whoops. It is 1 inch wide this way. I want to create a perfect square, and I'm going to set that down while I mark this. I want to get this perfect square on here because we know that the corners of a perfect square are 90 degrees. So I've marked that square. I'm going to take this ruler, my straight edge, from one corner to the next corner of that square on the diagonal. I want to start my blade a little bit higher than my foam core so that my pressure is good. We want really good sharp cuts on these miters so that they fit nicely together. So I'm going to push down and swipe through. If you start right there on kind of that foam core edge, a lot of times it can kind of crunch down your foam core before it actually wants to cut it. So we're going to do the same thing to every strip. We're going to go long point to long point all along this one side. So we'll do the same thing. We'll mark that 1-inch square. And I want to make sure that I'm going at the correct diagonal here. So from this corner to this corner, I'm going to pop this blade right up here, slice right through. So now we've got some really nice sharp edges. My next step for this is going to be to get a little bit of paint right along this, and I'm going to show you why. Once we have them all cut and that white edge is showing, when you go to bump them together, a lot of times, if they're just a little off, you can kind of see that white popping through. So I'm just going to take my grungy sponge, my Dollar Tree kitchen sponge that I use to do my edges with, and I'm just going to tap a little of that on. You don't even have to get full coverage. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. Just a little color right along that top part of that edge. And it really kind of saves you from having any of that white peek out at you. Now you can kind of see that even if I tilt this and it's off even just a hair, you're not seeing white pop through on you. So I'm going to do that to all 4 of these points. Now that my framing pieces are put to the side so that they can kind of dry a little bit, I don't want any paint transfer here since I'm working with mostly white. I want to go ahead and show you what we're doing with this 14 by 14 cut. So I went ahead and I kind of jumped ahead, and you can see that I used, this is actually a piece of the wax paper that's on the back of my transfer paper from my Cricut. You could use regular wax paper. I went ahead and pulled my alphas off so that I could figure out my alignment, and that's probably going to vary a little bit depending on which font you're actually going to go with, which one you choose. If you notice, these are a really tall one, so I had to kind of play with my arrangement to see what was going to fit. I've got a little extra letters over here because I wanted to show you guys my use for the red ones. Now, you've got a couple options here. You can come in and do the I love you. I'm going to go ahead and pop my O off now. You can come in and do the I heart you part in the red and really have the entire thing pop. Or you can come in and do it in just this version where it's the heart that kind of jumps out on there. And either which way I think can work out cute. I'm likely going to go with this direction simply because I'm not doing a whole ton of red for Valentine's this year. So I'm going to leave the rest of my letters in the black and just have my heart in red. But I did want to show the look if you went ahead and did a couple of the red as an accent. And I wanted to show you guys this, how cute this looks. This is why I did it on the wax paper, is I could move these around until I visually liked how it turned out. Since these red ones were capitals, they do not have dots. Let me look. Maybe they have a period, or you know what? They do. Look, they have some little dots on there. So I don't know, maybe that changes my perspective a little. It's a little more of a blend, but I wanted to show you just that little jazz of sparkle there and mix it with the red. And I really like that look too. So lots of options. You guys know that I am very prone to change my mind right in the middle. I don't even know why I kind of call my corner, so to speak, since I do know that I'm prone to change. But this is kind of my general layout. It'll give you some ideas of how to get your general layout down. Now here's what's funny to me. This is where I said this is not a new idea. And you can kind of see, it took me, I had a couple sheets of these that I had already taken letters off of, so it took me a couple of sheets to kind of finish out my entire alphabet. Now, my scrapbooker friends, you guys are going to recognize this as a thing in the scrapbooking world for years and years. Anytime you see this kind of layout, you typically know that they were doing some kind of challenge to use up alphas that they've been hanging on in their stash. This is nothing new. This design layout is nothing new. This has been done a million times in the scrapbook world. We do this whenever we're trying to get rid of stickers that we've kind of held on to for a really long time. So in order to get mine laid down, I've got this. I know that this is pretty much my layout, or where my letters are going to align. My wax paper was cut at 12 by 12. It just happened to be that size, and it really worked out with the 14 by 14 to give me kind of this white space border around this little section. So I'm going to come in and really, really lightly mark a 1-inch border in some places so that I can kind of see where to align my letters. I don't want to draw all over this thing, but when I applied them to here, I don't know if you can see, but it had a grid pattern on the back side of that helped me a lot get those letters on there evenly. And you could probably, if you wanted to, do it the same way that you would do playing with vinyl. Come in, get them on your wax paper, get them lined up, take some transfer paper, pop that on. I just don't like doing that too often because the transfer paper can rip your foam core surface. And you have to be really, really careful. And I just didn't have the patience to be that overly careful with that many letters. So here's pretty much where I stand. I'm going to be able to erase this, and I'll show you what eraser I suggest. This is a Dollar Tree. This is like a gum style eraser. I've used these for years for scrapbooking to remove adhesive and stuff. But one thing that I found is that on this foam core, especially this paper white surface, this gets things off without smudging it worse, which you can have with a normal pencil eraser. It also can kind of scrub off or buff off fingerprints. If you happen to have like an oily fingerprint mark, sometimes if it's a very light paint fingerprint, you can rub it off with this thing. It works with your glues and adhesives too. Even hot glue, if you catch it early enough while it's still melty, you can rub it off with this thing. So that all being said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to start placing my letters. Now, one thing I want you to look at if you're going to use this font, these letters, you need to make sure that when you do this 1-inch border around here, don't start your A way up high, because you're going to come in with this taller B, and that's going to pose a problem. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is that in kind of spreading this out, I'm going to start at the front of my line and then put the end ones and then kind of work my way in so all of my letters are spaced out fairly well. And I'm going to start applying these, and you guys will see what I mean. So here's what I was talking about. Now I've got the flushness here against this border, the flushness here against this border, and I can kind of work my way in. And there's other tricks you can use. You can always line them up here. Let's see, I'm going to line this one about here. You can do this with your ruler, with wax paper. I'm kind of getting my alignment and going to play with it right here while I've got this grid, while I've got my ruler in place, while I've got it above the actual area that it's going to be placed. I can see where they're going to go for the most part. Move them around a little bit. Get them aligned. And then slide them up in place. So now all I have to do is kind of slide these in place. Stick them down and slide this back out. And hopefully I got all of those aligned. And there we go. So I want to make sure I got quiet there for a minute, guys. I was looking down to make sure I didn't accidentally, not paying attention, stick any letters in the wrong order. So my best suggestion, trying to get your letters to be smoothed down, just use a softwood popsicle stick. This is one of the Dollar Tree ones. You're less likely to gouge into this foam core and leave dents. And if you gouge into the stickers, because they are thin, they will gouge also down into the foam core and you have a dent in your letters also. So I'm going to continue this same pattern of doing things. I'm going to work my way down, and I'm going to move these letters over here to the side just so I don't keep knocking them off. And the easy thing about doing this is I can just work this down and kind of play with it from here. So this really helps using this wax paper, and it didn't cost me anything. I just kept it from going in the garbage after I use some vinyl. So I'm going to go ahead and get mine sticking down. Really quickly, before I move any further, I wanted to kind of show you where my next step went. I want to come down. I hit all 4 of these corners. So now my little white space border around here is going to be pretty much in perfect square alignment. Everything else that I want to line up, I want to make sure it aligns this direction, and across here, and then fill in all the rest of it. And I hope that makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and finish this out. I'm not going to make you watch me put down all 26 alphabets. But I did kind of want to point out that if eyeballing it's not really your thing, there are some cheats. Doing it, kind of knocking out these 4 corners or top and bottom line, really help you get your alignment on this. So here's my final layout, guys. I wanted to show you. Don't forget, you can always do the red letters. You could always come in and do the really sparkly. Ooh, I don't know. I kind of think I like the really sparkly. I was leaning towards the little wood one, but the sparkly one has kind of got my attention. I don't know. I'm going to look at that part. But the next thing I wanted to remind you is that if you've got, once you've got them all laid down, go through, make sure that they're nice and flat, just sealed down good. These are nicely kind of removable. You can adjust them really well as you're going. If you happen to lay one down in error, just kind of lift it up carefully and you should be able to move it. So I'm going to come in now with this Dollar Tree eraser, and I'm going to go ahead and clean up all of my little sketch lines that I put there for myself, being real careful not to damage the edge of my stickers, trying not to get any extra handprints on here. So once that's clean and you've got it all finished out, we can go ahead and assemble this guy. All my frame pieces are now dry. You can see all of my edges are done. Everything's painted out. So I can go ahead and start popping these down on this kind of shiplap back piece. And I'm just using some Dollar Tree hot glue. And I'm going to pop this right flush against here. This is where I usually suggest go ahead and dry fit all of the rest of your pieces. Make sure they're going to work. I am just sliding this really nice and flush against that edge. I say that, let me make sure to do that for myself. And it looks like I'm in pretty good shape. So I can go ahead and get all of these glued down. I'm just going to kind of spin this whole piece around, get them all in their place. I want a nice tight seal to this edge here. I want to get those kind of really touching together, because when we go in and paint that white edge there with this brown paint, it really kind of gives it that look of just being a solid frame piece around that side. Just keep bumping these guys in their place. My entire frame is now attached, and this is where you get to decide if you want your shiplap look to go up and down, or if you want it to go sideways. I'm kind of thinking I'm going to go up and down with it. I'm just going to eyeball this. Let me make it easy on myself. I'm just going to pop my ruler out. That should be pretty much spot on from one end to the other. So I'm just going to take this whole section, load this thing down with glue. So let me put a new stick in. And I'm going to get it put right in its little place. Try to get those edges so that they attach really well. I'm working kind of fast. This is a 14 by 14 inch square, and I want pretty good coverage, so I want my glue to dry on me before I get it placed down. Now I'm just going to kind of eyeball it from edge to edge here. Use my finger, slide it in place there. That should be about the center. So here we go. This is my finished piece. Last thing I would do is what I like to kind of call the quality control stage. If you want a finished out back, you could go ahead and paint out your back now. I don't know that I'd recommend it on this. It's pretty thin. It's going to darken that back side. If you really want a finished out back, I would go in and use like the brown craft wrapping paper from Dollar Tree and do that on your back, or leave it as is. Your next step would just be to come in, check for glue strings, finish painting out your edges so that this looks like one long strip. And you're good to go. You should be able to hang, this is a 20 by 20 piece, so it's pretty sizable. You should be able to hang this though, as lightweight as it is, with just simple command strips. This one's lightweight enough that you could probably do it with some strategically placed poster putty. And that's pretty much all I've got for you guys. I wanted to get this made. This is a really fun one to me. I've done this many times, kind of as a scrapbook page. So you kind of seen me already lean towards that scrapbook side of me for some of my sign designs. So this was kind of fun for me. It lets me get a little bit of that vibe in with my regular crafting. And I hope you guys enjoy it, or at least get a little bit of an idea from it. I hope you get a chance to do a little crafting on your own. I hope you get a chance to jump over to the Peppermint Cactus group and see what's going on over there. There are some really great projects going up right now. Absolutely love them. Looking forward to so many more. You guys are just blowing my mind. It's so fun to see what all pops up. And this is it, guys. I'm going to go and start on my next one.